He waded through the damp earth before dawn, shovel in hand, breath pluming in the cold morning air. The task had been given without explanation. Dig a grave beyond the town's edge, where the mist clung to the marsh and the twisted willows whispered in the dark. Each shovelful of soil hit the growing mound with a dull thud, and the ground seemed to resist as though reluctant to yield its secret. He paused for a moment, brushing sweat from his brow despite the chill, and looked out toward the horizon. A faint glow began to bleed into the sky, pale pinks and grays heralding sunrise. He had been digging for hours, guided only by the flickering light of a lantern and his own determination. In the distance, the silhouette of the town's church steeple stood stark against the brightening sky, an anchor in the sea of mist. Then his shovel struck something solid. Metal. He froze, heart pounding, and knelt to examine the intrusion. A cold, rusted ring, part of a coffin hinge, peeked through the clay. He dropped his shovel and began to clear the soil by hand. Underneath lay a weathered wooden lid, fogged with age and damp. His fingers traced the grain of the wood, rough, splintered, ancient. With great effort he pried the lid open. The nails holding it in place gave way with a sigh, and the wood creaked as it freed itself. The lantern light spilled into the hollow rectangle. Inside, instead of the hollowed void he expected, there lay a woman, her features pale beneath the lantern's glow but undeniably alive. Her chest rose and fell in shallow, rhythmic breaths. Stunned, he scrambled back, heart hammering. Moments passed as he stared at her. She wore a gown of white that had yellowed with time, floral patterns embroidered along the bodice. Her hair, dark as raven's wings, fanned out across the damp coffin floor. Her eyes fluttered open, revealing irises the color of storm clouds, and she stared at him with confusion and fear. His mind raced. He had been told to bury a body, nothing more. Yet here was a living woman buried beneath the earth. Gently he reached inside and helped her upright. She trembled, her legs weak, but rose with his support. Together they stumbled out of the coffin. As fresh air hit her face, her eyes widened with relief. He wrapped his coat around her shoulders and she leaned into him, shivering. For a long moment they stood in silence, the morning chorus of birds at odds with the grim tableau before them. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft and hoarse. "Where am I?" He swallowed hard. "Outside the town," he managed. "I was told to dig a grave here." Her brow furrowed. "They buried me alive." A cold knot formed in his stomach. Who would do such a thing? And why? He glanced at the fresh mound he had created. It was meant for her, almost complete. Rage flared, but he pushed it aside. First, he needed to get her to safety. He helped her to a nearby tree, its branches skeletal against the dawn. Leaning against its trunk, she closed her eyes, breathing deeply. He knelt beside her. "What's your name?" She hesitated. I'm Elise." "Lie back against the tree," he said gently. "I'll get help." She nodded, and he ran toward town, his boots splashing through puddles. His mind whirled with questions. Who had left her to die? What crime had she committed? He burst into the constable's office as the lanterns were being extinguished and rapped on the door. The constable, a burly man with a red face, opened it groggily. "What is it at this hour?" "There's a grave outside town," he panted. "A living woman was buried alive. You must come, now." Moments later, they returned with a stretcher. The constable's men lowered Elise onto it and carried her toward the healer's cottage. The man who had dug her out followed, his heart heavy with worry. By the time they reached the healer's doorstep, the sun had fully risen. The healer, a kind-faced woman with gentle eyes, took Elise inside and began to tend to her. He waited outside, pacing the dirt path. The townsfolk gathered, murmuring in alarm at the news. Word spread quickly of the miraculous rescue. When the healer emerged, she smiled at him. "She's weak but alive. She'll recover with rest." He exhaled, relief flooding through him. "Thank you." "Stay close," she advised. "She'll need a friend." Over the next days, he visited often. Elise rested, regaining her strength. She could speak little of her past, only that she had been taken from her home some nights ago, blindfolded and brought here. She remembered only muffled voices and rough hands. When she awoke in the coffin, terror had nearly consumed her. But his unexpected kindness had given her hope. He learned that her family lived in a distant village, miles away. No message had been sent on her behalf. No search had been mounted. Whoever had buried her alive wanted her dead and wanted the world to believe she had committed a grave sin. Yet he saw innocence in her eyes, a gentle spirit wronged by cruelty. As news of her rescue spread, so did outrage. The mayor convened a council, angrily denouncing the unknown perpetrators who had nearly killed an innocent. Guards were dispatched to scour the countryside for clues. He stayed by Elise's side, bringing flowers picked at dawn, fresh bread, anything that might lift her spirits. One evening, as the lanterns were lit and shadows danced in the cottage, Elise called him outside. Seated on a stone bench beneath the window, she looked at him with gratitude. "If not for you, I might be dead." He shook his head. "I did what anyone would. No one deserves that fate." Her gaze held his. I feel I owe you more than thanks." The wind whispered through the trees. The silence between them grew charged. He touched her hand. Soft, warm, alive. The memory of her pale features in the coffin chased away the moment's tenderness. "You owe me nothing," she smiled, but it faded into concern. "Tomorrow, I should leave. Return to my family." He drew in a breath of cold air. "I'll help you." She shook her head. "They will worry if I am gone. I need to go back soon." He nodded, though his heart sank. Still, he respected her wishes. "I'll escort you." Night deepened and they parted. He stayed by the window, watching the healing lamp flicker inside. His mind spun. Why marry her? But the pull between them was undeniable. She was a living miracle, plucked from death itself. She belonged here, with someone who cherished her. Before sleep claimed him, he made a decision. At dawn, he was at the healer's cottage with fresh clothes and a small bundle of provisions. Elise emerged, looking pale but determined. He offered her a cloak of dark wool lined with fur. She slipped it on. "Thank you." He met her gaze. "I know you said you wanted to return home." She hesitated. "I do." He swallowed. "Then I ask only this. Allow me to marry you, so no harm can come to you again." She stared at him, shock and wonder mingling in her eyes. "Marry me?" He nodded. "In front of witnesses before the sun rises. So you are under my protection and no one can harm you again." Tears glistened in her eyes. "You would anything to keep you safe." Her lips trembled into a smile. "Yes." He offered his hand, and she took it. Together they walked into the village square, where the mayor and healer waited along with 2 guards. The village priest had just finished his morning prayers and emerged at their request. The pale sky stretched overhead. Without hesitation, the priest bestowed his blessing. They exchanged simple vows, an oath of protection, an oath of love. She slipped a plain ring onto his finger, and he did the same for her. No grand ceremony, yet the act felt monumental. When the final amen faded, the townfolk who had gathered cheered softly, moved by the union of compassion and gratitude. As the sun peeked over the horizon, they stood side by side. He gently brushed a lock of hair from her face. "I will never let you face the earth alone again." She leaned into him, warmth against his side. "And I will stand with you, always." They walked through the square, arm in arm, the morning light casting long shadows behind them. Birds sang as though in celebration, and the breeze carried the promise of new beginnings. Beneath the twisted willows where she had nearly died, they paused. He knelt and laid a single white rose atop the fresh mound of earth, now left to rest eternally as a monument to cruelty. She placed her hand over his and whispered, "Thank you for giving me life again." He smiled, rising to his feet. "Thank You for choosing to live. Hand in hand, they turned toward home, hearts bound together by destiny. The town's gates opened to welcome them, and the path ahead shimmered with possibility. In the light of dawn, they walked into their future, a life begun anew on the edge of a grave.